We have Dr. Russell Hunter, who has a PhD in computational neuroscience. He's a senior teaching associate at the University of Cambridge, and he's also a tutor for our data science course. So he will also be your tutor. Hi, Dr. Hunter. Then we also have Sheldon Kemper, who is a data engineer with Capgemini, and Sheldon is actually of our alumni who has completed this exact course. And then you have me, your host, Rasmeen. I am a success manager with Fourth Rev, and I work solely with the data science learners. So I will be working with you. You will see my face at some point. You will see an email from me as well. So during the 60-minute session, you'll learn about your EP, which is the employer project overview. It will look at real world format goals, timeline, and the skills that you will develop. There will be some faculty insights from Dr. Hunter. So, what makes a standout project? What are common pitfalls or anything that he may have uh, that he would flag for you prior to the employer project? And then Sheldon will have a look at what it's like to work on the EP, his project steps, challenges, and outcomes, and then we'll do the Q&A for you. So, if you have any questions, jot them down and put them in your chat. So, from learner to practitioner, why is this project a pivotal moment? So, your employer project will be a 6-week final live business project at the end of your course, and your final course, which is course 4, is the EP, which you will do with Dr. Hunter as well. And a real world brief from a leading employer partner. The project runs for 6 weeks alongside course 4. You'll balance independent work with team check-ins, mentoring, and presentation to the industry stakeholder in the final weeks. The type of support you'll receive is as follows. You'll have weekly team check-ins, you'll receive success team support, which will be myself, Melissa, and Kazi. Mentor guidance from your tutor. You also have an industry mentor that will offer you some guidance here. There will be Q&A sessions, and you have a peer community to rely on. You'll present your final solution to the business stakeholders. You'll explain your approach, justify decisions, and communicate your solution. And then finally, your portfolio. Your project becomes part of your professional portfolio. It's tangible proof of your applied skills, and it's something that you can walk into an interview with and speak to confidently. So, here's a quick uh, extract from the last project we had with the Bank of England, right? So, we know that the occupational economy right now and the state of the job market is not ideal. However, data science is quite in a healthy space. If you were to receive an interview with a possible employee, you walk into the interview and they ask you, what are the skill sets? What are the technical skills that you can bring to this platform, to this job, to this organization? And you say, you know what? I was at Fourth Rev. I did this Cambridge course. This is the group of people I worked with. These are the skills I worked on. This is the project I did. This is the problem, and this is how I found the solution. The employer project allows you to stand out. It allows you to showcase the skills that you've completed. It allows you to show this is what I've done, this is what I've worked through, and this is the technical know how that I have learned from doing this specific project. This is an extract from the employer project that we had with the Bank of England, which both Dr. Hunter and Sheldon can speak to. It's also something that they've both participated in. So some of the main soft skills that you've developed through the EP are problem solving, so learning how to scope, research, analyze, and develop solutions allowed to partner expectations. Collaboration, working as a team is key here. You will obviously be working with diverse individuals with a variety of skills and talent sets. And then project management and accountability, learners gain experience in managing group dynamics and delivering outputs under pressure. So it's quite a intense 6 weeks, but it's a highly fruitful 6 weeks. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to Dr. Russell Hunter to speak a bit more about what makes a project great.
Hi everyone. I'll try and speak slowly because I'm Scottish. But no, what makes this project great? Well, I have to say, Yeah, when I first came on the course and we chatted through, in fact, the full course in general, I had to say that I've been doing this for a long time and it's certainly one of the best I'd ever come across. And what made this project really cool was that, it's a real, it's a real project that's unsolved and looking into a very complex space that potentially hasn't been looked at so much, or certainly in the beginning. I guess every cohort has looked at it to some degree, and the rich set of skills that you can obtain from this are very exciting. So uh, I don't know how much to talk about the project in general, Rosamine. What do you think? Can I go into it a little bit about what they're
Yeah,
doing? Yeah.
sure,
Okay.
Dr.
So
Hunter.
we got a little bit of an overview there, but basically they're looking at something called a GSIB, a global systemically important bank. So banks that are too big to fail. They're worried. Generally, we're worried about those failing because of the effects it has on the global market, which has already been expressed, as we remember. Well, maybe we don't. Maybe we're not as old as me, but in 2008, that instance. And to do that, of course, there are lots of metrics available, dashboards and metrics and quantitative data. Um, but what we have here are quarterly earnings transcripts. So these are discussions between, well, not just discussions, presentations from banks about the bank's performance and also some Q&A. And we have a bunch of people asking questions from throughout the financial sector. They ask questions to the bank after the presentation, and the bank then answers. And where this gets really interesting is that you're trying to find out if people are not lying as such, but perhaps avoiding and trying to find little details out about little nuanced details about what's happening with the responses or with the questions directly as well, because it will be to do with external factors, especially when it comes to time. So they'll be looking at I don't know, they might ask them about some legislation changes. You can look at different banks that you want to work with. They could be working in different markets. There's lots of volatility. Well, maybe not right now, but certainly was with tariffs and things, for example. And it's a very exciting project because it moves over time. And trying to build a solution like this is actually really quite complex, because even if you think about yourself and the way that you want to portray yourself publicly, everything is very positive, isn't it? You don't, or neutral at least, especially in a professional setting, it'll be neutral. And trying to find that nuance about what people are discussing is actually really quite tricky. So we can use like a whole bunch of different techniques to do that. Modern techniques. I mean, clearly, I'm sure you're all thinking right away, as everybody does, about Gen AI, which we often call LLMs, but LLMs can be, Gen AI will be on one side of what we call a transformer, but we've got the other side of the transformer, and we use a little bit of both, or we can use a little bit of both. And the kind of solutions that you can make here can be bleeding edge, the sort of thing that can work with any company. So, like when you look at a problem like this and you're trying to solve this problem, of course, you've got to get the data in the right format, but you can ask yourself questions about, well, how can I solve this? Okay, well, I can find out about the topics people are talking about. I can see that transcending over time because I've got all the earning calls. I can see that there's some sentiment here, but it's not so good using off-the-shelf models trained on financial data because everybody's neutral and everybody's putting a positive front on things. But there are little details that I can pull out with specific types of sentiment analysis and things. But you can think yourself, well, what other things can I look at? Well, of course, there are other markers. Can I bring those markers in? Well, they're not specified in the projects, but how do you validate things? Well, you validate things mainly in life by taking lots of different sources, don't you? Even in your normal life, you take lots of different sources. And it could be news, such as the Financial Times. They'll look at these reports and say, meh, maybe they're not telling the truth, or yeah, maybe they're undershooting for some reason, or so you could be using separate um, external sources. You could be using quantitative data. You could be using the qualitative data that we have here and putting them all together into what we call something like a multi-agent solution, or using a RAG, where we take all the documents and we process them, and we're able to search against them over time, or it gets very complex before I say something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, the depth of this project is incredible, and the results I've seen in 6 weeks, and when you think about it, really 4 weeks of coding, the results I've seen are staggering. Imagine you were to go into one of these things came out and you could analyze this in context to the real world with historical data, um, have some sort of dashboard, query it, and you could translate that into your workplace too. I mean, every workplace has objectives. They have competitors. They have news cycles. They have Slack messages internally. They have reports that get sent to executives with different interests from different people. And these things can be used across the board to get data or to derive meaning from data we don't usually use. That's what I think is really cool about it in general. So yeah, there's possibly too much there, I'm sure. I do apologize. Yeah, when it comes to overcoming common challenges, well, the main thing, as I say throughout all of the teaching, I'm sure Sheldon might remember the thing I say about, and I'm sure he already knew this as well, but uh, the data is the problem, right? So it's messy data. Everything is to do with the data. If you don't have good data, then or the right data, rather it's the wrong way to put it, but you have to be able to process the data properly in order to be able to use it. That's one of the things people don't consider in this instance is it's not really in a great format, and the story that they want to tell sometimes it's not so simple to work out whether the way you've deconstructed the data or created actually created some sort of structure to use it will give you the answers that you want. And this is a very time-consuming part and critical, of course, any data, of course. Technical gaps. So this was really interesting to me every single time. It's like sort of potluck about what background people have. People come to courses for different reasons, especially a course like this, an accelerator program. Some people probably love data science already and they think, well, I want a qualification. This sounds like a great course. I want some examples. Some people come along because they really want to get into it. They might have some understanding, but they don't really know much about the heavier parts of it, I suppose. And some people might come from financial sectors, some people might come from entirely different sectors. And when you put those people into a group, it gets really interesting. And quite a lot of the times it reflects what a real group is like. And yeah, so there could be different technical gaps about what can be achieved. In terms of domain knowledge, well, that comes to the same point. I mean, domain knowledge in general, we've had a couple of people who work with agentic solutions already, so they've already, able to do things that some other groups can't do, and they'll have to pick that skill up if that's what they want to do. You don't have to make multi-agent solutions, but a lot of people decide to go down that road because it has many parts. And it's a great way to do it, and it's sort of bleeding edge. And time constraints, well, it's very stressful. Every assignment's very stressful. I remember making myself sick from being worried about time constraints to do with assignments, which you should never do. Just relax and it'll be fine. But 6 weeks is not a long time, and making sure that you assign things properly, pair properly. If somebody's got a particular skill, and pairing will help, because if one person can jump off to do something else, the other person can continue with what is being worked on at that moment. Trying to get the team dynamics is very important, and obviously team collaboration. It can be very overwhelming, especially for people who might not. If you're put in a group where you have some very skilled people, it can feel like they can, I guess, take over. It's not really what happens. It's just people with experience know what they're doing. As my old boss used to tell me, is that problem solving is practice. And people who have practiced a lot with these types of problems will be able to accelerate into those solutions. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say there, and I'm sure I can answer some questions at the end, but it's a fantastic project, and these are some of the things that you can face, but everybody's got through this and very well, and the solutions are fantastic. In fact, the bank has been very impressed.
So much, Dr. Hunter. I'll hand over to Sheldon.
So where to start? I think Dr. He's covered quite a lot. Some of the challenges that we experience and in our brief, and the dynamics between the team, and that aspect was very important for us to be able to deliver our project successfully. So I'll just cover a few of these slides. So we'll go from our problem brief to our exploration, our research, and our solution, and then our final presentation. So Rosmi, if you just go on the next slide, please. So to discuss this, the Bank of England needed to make sense of their quarterly earning transcripts, and these calls are lengthy and unstructured. And so we had to use LLMs to explore and NLPs to uncover emerging risks, sentiment trends, and then macro level themes. And I think quite early on, when you start looking through it, I was, at least from my side, I was kind of expecting that they had some kind of standardized format when it came to PDFs, and you very quickly go through it and you realize each bank, their transcripts were entirely different, and there was going to be challenges around cleansing and pre-processing that data. So if we just go to the next slide, please, Rosmi. But one of the most important things initially was to set up a team. And so with my background, in engineering and agile, I was very aware of the communication channels that we needed to set up. So initially we set up a WhatsApp group, and was just kind of like trying to organize things. And then very quickly we realized that to be able to organize our communications via WhatsApp wasn't necessarily going to be the best approach. So we brought up looking at the likes of Slack, and then incorporating Jira, and then Confluence for our documentation. And that was always very important, as we're working through our solution, and our solution changes over time, and our insights are building. We had that space to be able to refine those documentations, and then every week setting up meetings. And we'd have 3 meetings a week, like on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of thing, and then everyone would try and make it to those meetings. But then obviously closer towards our project delivery, we had to accelerate those meetings and then have those almost daily. So those were important. But one of the most obviously important things was identifying some of the skills that our team members had. And I realized that our team wasn't just set up, it wasn't just randomly picked as in, these 6 people or these 5 people are going to go together. We noticed that there was people with a data science background, or somebody with project management background, or myself with data engineering. And initially, everybody was just like, well, I want to do something different to my normal day-to-day. I don't want to do project management. I've been doing it for 15 years. And they wanted to, do something around the models. At some point, I realized that, at least for myself, going into the AI field, I think even if it was just, when you're going into an interview, and even in data engineering, you get the whole AI is feeding more into, and those solutions, how how in data engineering you can leverage AI. So just being part of an AI project would be important. So even if you're doing the data engineering or project management or something like that, you could then speak in that interview in that terminology. So initially I was working as a project lead, and then a few weeks later I had to go in for some surgery, and somebody who would have been promising as a project lead then eventually decided to take over, and realized that she would need to kind of use the skills that she already had. So we swapped between that, and then towards the end, which I'll explain a bit later, things kind of had to come together into our pipeline. So we obviously had our project lead, our data engineer, our NLP lead, and then our research leads. So then yeah, we also got splitting the transcripts into management and Q&A section. So initially there was a number of different types of documents. It was like some videos, and I messed around with trying to pull out the text from those conversations. But then we obviously found the managements and then the questions and answers, and we focus on the questions and answer sections to be able to get those findings. So we just move on to the next slide, please. So the pre-processing was it definitely took the longest amount of time, and we took two approaches. So we took like a data engineering approach, and that's challenging in itself because each of these transcripts, their formats differently. So the logic to be able to format those transcripts has to be specific to that bank. But even by yearly, those formats could change. The complexity of trying to cleanse a PDF is very challenging. So we had two approaches. So we did like a typical data engineering approach, but then we also messed around with an LLM to try and do some of that cleansing and pull out some of that data into a JSON format. So some of and then obviously our team split up into looking at different, so the topic modeling, the sentiment analysis, and the summarization, and then trying different models. So we're talking about topic modeling. We had BERT topic, then we upgraded to GTP4 for deeper financial clustering. Our sentiment analysis, we used FinBERT, and we found that everything was coming back very neutral. Initially we thought, well, FinBERT's going to work because it's been trained on financial, but then so moving over to FLAN T5, our F1 scores improved. But yeah, so I suppose some of the things around that was chunking, and then deciding the strategy for our chunking. It's just somebody's doing some of that chunking and you're just not getting the right types of insights from it. So that was obviously a lot of backwards and forwards, but definitely the pre-process. So you're kind of doing that modeling, but then you have to go back to the pre-processing and go, okay, we need to change the chunking strategy because the insights we're getting aren't working. So if we just move on to the next slide. So our final solution. So I'd come back from surgery, and our team was kind of doing all their little bits and pieces and messing on these models and gaining all these insights. And the weeks were running out. We had like 2 weeks, and then I had to say to the team, listen, we need to kind of like stop, and we need to kind of develop our pipeline. And whatever issues that we do have, we're just going to need to call those out and go, we've done this, but this isn't working, and this is why it's not working, and we're aware of it. And as you do with an agile type of process, you could come back in the future, in theory, and then improve on that. So we had a pipeline to be able to pull in the PDFs from the banks, to import them, and then do the pre-processing pipelines, and then applying the topics and the sentiment and the summarization. And then also, and then apart from that, so where the rest of the team was focusing on that element, I was, because I was doing the project management as well. It was, everybody can't do everything. I mean, in theory, you could just have 6 people doing their own versions of everything and then trying to come together. But the aim of this project, fundamentally, is being able to work as a team and to be able to resolve these conflicts. And you're going to come across conflicts. People are going to have different ideas of how to apply something, and then how do you come to that consensus that this is the approach that we're going to take. So that was definitely one of the, it's definitely one of the more challenging aspects. And some people are more vocal than others. And, how do you find that common ground? And so I suppose that aspect is something to keep in mind. But I focused, on the chat, on the RAG chatbot. And when we did the project, the likes of agents was all very new. I think even I think on one of my first calls, I don't know if Dr. Hunter was even there, I brought up the question of, are we going to be using agents? And it, at that point, it wasn't even in the as part of our modules. And then, by the time we got to the end of the course, agents were were included. So it was all new and very early. So what I kind of built was, my idea was I'll use an agent, or I'll use agents or tools to be able to specialize between a particular bank. So even though we were just doing questions and answers, you could in theory have other data points that you'd be pulling in, so news feeds or videos or something, and then that agent could specialize in that. That was the idea. I mean, I don't know if it was executed particularly great, but it worked. And then the final part of that is you built that solution, but then how are you going to communicate that to your stakeholders? So we built a Power BI, or one of our team built a Power BI report, and we put that in there. So that made it a lot easier for those stakeholders at the banks to be able to have that conversation, with the insights that we managed together. Yeah, and next slide. So the turning points. Yeah, so switching from Finbert to Flan T5, it's as I said, you kind of, if you set your mind as then this is going to be the solution, then and not have that open mind that maybe there's an alternative model that can provide you with more accurate results. That's important. And then moving from the static output, so we had our Flan T5 provide some insights, but for somebody at the bank to be able to just type in and get that engaging answer, was very very useful. And as I mentioned before, summarizations are only as good as the chunks and then the prompts behind them. And that's and that's the bit I realized with the RAG was actually how important is my prompt. And then they talk about prompt engineering, and I was like, yeah, you're just putting in some kind of a prompt, but how you craft that prompt can be important. So some of the key lessons was structured collaboration beats individual brilliance, and you can't model your way out of messy data. So cleansing is everything, and the alumnus are powerful, but they're only useful when the end product is intuitive to non-technical users. So all those bought, that was So what you'll learn is it's taming messy real-world data, collaborating across disciplines, build and evaluate a full LLM workflow, and then deliver those insights that matter. So yeah, it was a challenging project, and I think when when Forev talks about your 20 hours a week, there was definitely a lot more hours over that time. So it's just something to bear in mind. So if you're going through your course and thinking well, I can fit everything in 10 hours or 15 hours or even 20 hours, to deliver that successful project, you need people that can find that time to kind of get that, if you want a good end result, to be able to dedicate that time to it. Yep. And that's it from me, Rosemary.
Thank you so much, Sheldon, for sharing your insights. Okay, so preparing for success, right? How do you ensure that you successfully complete your employer project? So, assigning clear roles early, you would have heard from both Dr. Hunter as well as Sheldon the importance of team collaboration and ensuring that roles are set accordingly. Yes, like Sheldon mentioned, it may be of your interest to try something new or to develop in a specific area, but obviously the way the teams are set up are in a way that they are people with different talent sets, different skill sets, and the group is diverse. So you will have someone with project management skills, you will have someone with coding background, you will have someone that enjoys presenting, for example. So keep that in mind when you're working towards your project. Playing to your team members' strengths boosts productivity as well as your accountability. Managing your time is key. So break the project into weekly goals, balances with your other demands to prevent last minute pressure. We know life happens. You have so much happening simultaneously. And I want you to know, as your success manager or part of the success management team, we are here to support you. Do not hesitate to reach out to us at any point during your journey to say, you know what, I need to have a 5 minute chat with you. I'm feeling overwhelmed, or even if it's things like dealing with, conflict within your groups, finding the time to complete your projects, just managing everything that's going on. We are here to support you and set up strong communication. Use tools like Trello, WhatsApp, Google Docs to stay connected and keep momentum. Whatever it is that works for you, use those tools. Obviously, the beauty of this course is that you will have, you will be in groups where you are based all over the globe, but sometimes that can make it challenging to communicate and to keep in touch. So I think over communicating is key to ensure that everything runs smoothly. Then research, then tailor. So ground your solutions in data, but always bring it back to the client brief. Keep iterating and redefining working cycles, plan, test, reflect, and improve, right? It's a work in progress. There's always room for improvement. And also rely on Dr. Hunter. He is exceptional at what he does, and he's always willing to answer your questions. Then, on your final presentation, you will be presenting live to the partner. So, know your narrative, anticipate questions, and ensure your delivery is confident and clear. You will have the autonomy to decide who presents, you will decide how many of you present. Um, but it's important that you practice your presentation and ensure that you are ready, because I can assure you that whichever partner you will have, they will have questions. Okay, so I am going to open the floor for the Q&A. I do see some questions in the Q&A box, but before we do that, we do have some FAQs. So how much time should I dedicate? Dr. Hunter, would you like to jump in for that one?
Good question. How much time should you dedicate? Well, I think that, I mean, it's quite intense, I think, especially to start with. And also, as I say to the teams all the way throughout, like I have no number for that, but we have people who are relentless sounds negative, but I think it's kind of like the way I work is, I'm lucky enough to do a job that I really, really enjoy, and it happens to be building stuff like this on a daily basis, and I will do it all day and all night. That's just what I like doing. So how much, time should you dedicate? I guess that depends on what your experience is, what your role is, but it is fairly full on. Um, yeah, and I know that's also difficult when you have a job and things as well, but certainly, quite a few hours, I would say, at least a couple of hours a night, I would say. Does that sound reasonable, Sheldon?
Yeah, sometimes more. I mean, I know from my side there was because I was working my notice period and I had 2 months where I didn't actually have much work on at work, so I could actually dedicate a lot more. But some days for me felt a lot longer. Yeah, but, yeah.
Thanks, Sheldon.
I suppose if everybody's pitching in, you could probably get away with a couple of hours every night.
Which tools are we going to use to clean and visualize data?
Well, there are lots of tools, aren't there? It's a really difficult, again. I mean, if you ask me, as I do tell the students sometimes, if you want to do things fast, just go and get ChatGPT, give it a file and ask it to do it for you. But obviously, you can use lots of off-the-shelf packages in order to be able to get so cleaning the PDFs, for example, PyPDF or something along those lines, depending on what you want to do with it. There are pipelines in place via the LangChain solutions for RAGs. I mean, that's that type of data, I guess. But I think LLMs are a really good way to do it very quick. If you want to know how, if you want something fast, you can use them and get some great results. And on a daily basis, I would use an LLM to help me in my initial stages, probably to create synthetic data, but maybe not in this instance. In terms of visualizations, well, it depends on what you mean again. With visualizations, what kind of plots do you want to use? But I don't know, matplot lib is a good, what I would use. I keep things pretty simple. Yeah, I mean, I leave things pretty simple. I'm one of those ones who likes walls of text in a terminal, but there are lots of different choices people can use in order to do those two things. So like cleaning and visualizing data. I don't know, is there any other specific ones that you used? I mean, Power BI, as you say, was a good way to create like a dashboard for the output. Some people create an actual chatbot experience. They create via Streamlit. Um, Different teams choose to do different things, is what I'm basically saying. I could say use Finbert, as you've already seen. It's not particularly good, but it's a good place to start. I could say to use BERT topic. It's not particularly great, but it's also good for validation. I could say to use, and these are not for visualizations, I just mean I can tell you the tools to start with, because I'll teach the NLP part, which tends to dominate the thinking early on in an NLP project. And the reasons why I would use those things are for cross-validation, in case of hallucinations, which people still worry about quite a lot, but with the bigger models, it seems to have cut down quite a bit depending on what you're being asked. But there are so many tools out there that I do not limit anybody from using what they want as long as it looks okay, but focusing on the baseline, I think, is the way I like to think about it.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter. And then who presents at the end, which is similar to the group question. So you will present as a group. You'll be placed in a group of 5 to 6 people. The entire group generally presents, but sometimes life does happen. We have had learners that have had to travel for work and so on. So they were exempted from presenting as long as the team was okay with it and they had completed their work accordingly. How do we divide the work? Sheldon, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. So I suppose first and foremost was identifying, these different roles, and that would naturally lend, how that work's going to get divided, and then having our daily calls or our tri-weekly calls to discuss what work needs to be done and who's going to be doing that work, and by when it's going to be delivered.
Thank you, Sheldon. So is the BOE the only employer? No, we will be having other employer partners. This was just one of the examples, and this was obviously the project that Sheldon was a part of. I suppose there are confidentiality issues in relation to the data provided. How would this impact on the use of tools? So, Dr. Hunter, I will lean on you with that, but I do know that you will sign an NDA at the beginning of each course before you complete your project. And so, obviously, any suggestion or inferences to any company or specific data sets will not be allowed in your actual portfolio. Dr. Hunter, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonable statement. I think it must be mostly the solution that has to be held under NDA, because the data is available to anybody. You can do this now. People spend their days doing this. I mean, this kind of thing. I mean, there are groups of people who do it. I mean, I can remember as far back as, teaching time series and a multivariate solution using news articles and sentiment of news articles to try and get better share or stock predictions. And because the data is available, and I could download them now. You could download all of them now and start doing this project anytime you want. But I guess the difference here is what's coming from the from the bank. I guess you'll have to sign an NDA in terms of the solution and what they're asking for. But the data itself is open.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter. So this is a comment, but I see your two likes, so I will address it. Is anyone else here intimidated by the experience quality of the speakers and fellow colleagues? I feel rather underprepared early in my career than a lot of what has been mentioned. So I will say, as a success manager that has done this or been with quite a few cohorts, you have three exceptional tutors, but they are really personable and they are really lovely to work with. Dr. Cardona, Dr. Giovanna, as well as Dr. Hunter are always willing to support you and assist you. So please do not feel intimidated. Are those teams set up already or are they determined as we go through the course? They will be decided close nearer to the end. So when you're in course 3, those teams will be set up and you will be informed accordingly. Were any of the solutions to the project adapted or adopted by the BOE? So part of the NDA that you sign is giving the employer partner rights over the work that you complete. So sometimes they do ask, in fact, they've asked during live sessions for the content that has been covered. Whether or not they've adopted it, we don't know. Sheldon, this one's for you. Mentioning that you're working your notice period. If you have a 9-hour workday, how feasible do you think it is that someone could complete this project?
As in one person could complete the project. Is that the question?
Uh, I think it's probably like part of a group. Like, how feasible do you think it is
Yeah, it's feasible. I mean,
working on?
you will complete the project. You know, as long as you're actively communicating with your team. You know, and there's people picking up any blockers. And you're working through that. It's yeah, you know, as you said, some people on the team would. I mean, there was somebody on our team who was doing some kind of project, so they didn't have that much time to dedicate. So they dedicate when when they could, and others may have more time. So it's just splitting it up. For me, doing the cleansing, that took me a long time because initially I was going through all these different transcripts and then trying to cleanse them. So that was the bit that was taking me hours and hours. But yeah, I think it's all because not everybody's going to do everything. So it's going to be whatever's going to be important. You might be doing research, so there might be periods that you are actively working, but then there'll be periods when you may not be actively doing something. You might just be contributing. But yeah, it's just making sure that there is somebody who has that end goal in sight, and then can keep that team on track. And if there is any slack, that's picked up somewhere.
Thanks, Sheldon. And I think to add to that, we do have a holistic approach to support here. So you will have Dr. Hunt to support you. You will have your success managers. You also have an industry mentor as well as a Python expert. If at any point you are facing any hiccups, I think the key is just to reach out so we can tailor the support, based on what it is that you need. Dr. Hunter, what area of mathematics do you think is important in relation to this?
I saw this question actually. I'll get to it in a second. I just want to say to the people who are anybody who is feeling underprepared, like this is the most normal feeling I think that exists in every walk of life. I think there are very few people I've ever met who are, well, I mean, I have met them before, who are inherently confident of everything. I have heard someone describe themselves as a polymath, for example, and it's they're not any better or worse than anybody else with similar in similar roles. But to feel that way, I think, is very normal. But the good thing is that's also a good thing. You're going to try really hard, and you're going to get a great result, and you're going to be diligent, and you're going to be useful at work. So, to any employer, those things are what you're going to get the most out of. And to feel worried about it a little bit, it's very normal. I mean, I still get like that these days. I've been trying to solve a problem for about 3 weeks, I think, using LLMs and very complex data, and I start to worry day to day and probably stay up too late. And I still get like that now, even though I'm left alone and entrusted with these things, and I know I'll get it in the end because I'm very close. And I go through highs and lows. If anybody knows me, it's highs and lows. Um, Peaks and troughs, but besides that, yeah, in terms of the mathematics, you're not going to need any special mathematics here. I'm not even really sure you need very, very much in terms of mathematics for this project in particular. And because we're dealing at almost like a front end user part, you're not even really getting to understand how neural networks work. So when I was a PhD student, I used to build connectionist models a very long time ago before they were pretty cool, to be honest. They've always been cool. If you're weird like me, they're pretty cool. But where you had to understand the calculus, and having deep models was, it didn't exist really. These days, you know, you can work out the calculus, but there are lots of very interesting things that you'll learn throughout. But all of a sudden it gets very practical. And I think in this instance, for an NLP project, you're not really going to need much in the way of maths. You're going to need to understand statistics, I would say, for validation. Like a few of them were mentioned by Sheldon earlier. I would say that's more likely what you're going to have to understand. But if you were to do some quantitative work, you could, I mean, it's financial data, right? It's more like economics than, it's more 1, 2, 3 than X, Y, Z. So I think I wouldn't worry too much about that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more about the LLMs themselves, of course, you're going to have to do some pretty intense reading about calculus at some point. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter. If we have to sign an NDA, does this mean we can't upload our solutions to our GitHub? How will a portfolio be seen? Okay, so we actually have a document on this specifically. So later, as you progress through the course, we will provide you a bit more insight and guidelines on how to provide this information in your portfolio. Sheldon, how confident were you in your final insights? Who were the stakeholders at the bank?
Who were the stakeholders at the back? There were, I think for our presentation, if I remember correctly, there were actually the data scientists who were working
Yes.
on the solution. So yeah, so they were, when we were discussing at least, from the RAG perspective, and then trying to incorporate agents into it, it was like something that they hadn't thought about, and they found that, really interesting. How confident are your final insights? I suppose it depends how much testing you do, but how much time do we have for that? So we had 6 weeks. So it was, we provided an insight, and it was relevant. But yeah, I suppose confidence can always be, better, as I said, depending on how much testing happens, evaluations, etc.
Thank you, Sheldon. And I think to add to that, regardless of who the partner is at the time, they are aware of your time constraints, so they know how much work you have to do within 6 weeks. So keep that in mind as well. Do we write a structured report? Yes. So for every submission, you have a report as well as a notebook submission. But for your final project, it will be a bit different because you will obviously have a slide deck and you'll do a live presentation as well. The recording, it will be available. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Genuinely a fear. Much appreciated. Okay, so final few questions on the FAQ. If you have any more for us, please do let us know in the Q&A box. If you have any comments, any remarks. The last question here was, will the EP partner have access to my work after? And the answer to this is yes, they will have access to your work after, as this is part of the NDA as well. You give them rights to have access to your work. And like I said, the partners that we've had, the Bank of England has been really impressed with the work that our learners have done. And so a lot of times they would ask for them to share the work during the live session, or they would email us after. Okay, any other questions? Any other comments? What software would you recommend we download, install, and set up?
I don't think you're going to need, well, it'll depend on what your solution is, I suppose, and also what the constraints are. A lot of students decide to pay for additional GPU usage on Colab. So that's like an online, it's like a hosted Jupyter notebook. I'm sure you've seen them before in the course, I'm sure, or maybe in the past. And we do pretty much everything in there. But if you want to build a very complex solution, yeah, you're probably going to need to bring it. A lot of people do bring it locally or have it locally. So, but most of these things are just Python packages that are, installed. I mean, did you not use Crew AI, Sheldon? I can't remember.
No.
For the agentic framework, you could use, local packages like Crew AI or something along those lines. You could have local versions of the packages. You could be doing them in Colab if you wanted to. Some groups are able to do things depending on different tools that they've elected to use. So I wouldn't say you need to download anything, install or set up until we've chatted things through and you've tried a few things out. Obviously, it becomes more difficult when you do it on your machine directly. So if you want to use the bare metal, a lot of people have got a lot of technical skills, or some of them do, and they may want to use the bare metal on their machines in order to get full power. So like on a Mac, you could use some methods to use metal on it. And I do that in this machine just sitting to my left here, and I'll be doing it today. But yeah, yeah, I think that's that. I wouldn't worry too much about that at the moment.
I think what I'd add is having a shared repo is going to be useful. So setting up, your GitHub, because I think ultimately, like any tools you use, you've only got those 6 weeks. So if it's going to be a tool that's unfamiliar to the team, and it's the team that has to use it, they're going to need to have that time to be able to learn it. And then do you have that scope to be able to do that? And I think for GitHub, that was probably the one thing where we had to kind of like, I'd have calls with some of the team to, how, they don't know how to push to a repo, and it's because it wasn't something that they do in their day to day. So we try to keep a lot of the applications that we use as being familiar. And if somebody, like Jira for project management, the person who didn't actually want to do project management had suggested that, but nobody knew that. So we're kind of like, well, we don't know that, but so you're going to have to add that, because you can't have everybody now spending time learning, that aspect of it. So that's one thing just to keep in mind, is whatever tools you do use, are the team familiar with it, or is it simple enough that they can pick it up?
Okay, I see some questions in the comments, webinar chat as well. So from Sheldon's final project, I couldn't understand most of the terms, but I hope that it will be familiar to me when I'm reaching that phase. Is that right? Please enlighten me on this.
Yeah, definitely, you'll make sense of it. I mean, even I think the previous comment about feeling underprepared. I think by the time you've come to the end of the project, you're going to feel prepared. You're going to feel confident to be able to discuss, the project and the challenges and the benefits, and then be able to pick that up. Even in where I am now, when I took on this role, I'm still doing data engineering, but we have this AI accelerator where we're trying to provide AI tools to clients, and I'm essentially doing the same. I've essentially done the same thing. So instead of me using Colab, I'm using the likes of AI search and Azure function apps, etc. But everything that I've done on that course was immediately transferable. So you will have that confidence by the end of it. So don't feel threatened.
Yeah, I mean, that's bang on. I think I do say that when I don't know if anybody remembers, but I usually say something like that. It's like I usually even start at work with a Colab notebook just to test some stuff out, and I can copy and paste that into like a cloud function, and host or pull in the models where I need them. And it's great, isn't it? I mean, by the time you get to the end of the course, it just seems fairly obvious, but obviously at the start, you're not going to know. So yeah, you're definitely going to get there. But, someone asked
And then
something.
are we using agile methodologies?
Would say so to some degrees. I would think so, but maybe not though, right? I mean, I don't know. It would depend. Sheldon, what did you use? Because we don't force that down anybody's throat, because I guess again you've only got 6 weeks, and also you have to build like a vague timeline, which is hypothetically waterfall, which is it's strange, but you don't really you follow it as a breakdown just to understand the project as far as I understand. But you sound like you were using agile methodologies. If you're using Jira and you're using Git and you're having to push, and you've got you would have probably had some epics that you defined, and then you would be breaking those things down into potential tickets. But because it's an unknown space, often correct me if I'm wrong, but often it becomes more like an R&D style solution where you can go down a rabbit hole trying to fix a particular part, because you can't start without solving the data, um, the, the well, the data part, really, the data cleaning part. You can't really start before you do that. You can't start making insights before you've got the data in place. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't do the project, I guess, but it's for the teams to decide among themselves what they do. But that's how it feels to me anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, we did the same thing. So like where we just focus on one bank and do the cleansing for that one bank, and then you can do that modeling on another bank, and then and then whatever you, and then go, okay, well, we're getting something. Okay, we need another bank, and then you start bringing the other bank in, and you start doing some work on that, so people can start working sooner rather than later, instead of bringing in all the banks, cleansing everything, and then providing it to people or the rest of the team.
And then, Sheldon, knowing what you know now at the end, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself if you were to start it again fresh?
It's an interesting question. Hmm. I think, yeah, I think it probably would have been more useful had people used. I mean, people did use their skill sets, and but actually dedicated. So, the project manager actually doing project management. I think that would have translated better, and the project would have worked better. But I understood, people wanted to try something different and wanted new experiences in other ways, and you have to allow that. But I think we have everybody on this course is going to have a wealth of experience, in other fields that they're doing, and to be able to leverage that into the project would definitely is definitely valued. Um, yeah, it's I mean, conflict management is because there's periods when, as it gets closer, there's going to be periods where people are going to, you're going to have conflicting ideas. So I think when we started, we're like, no, we're not going to need to escalate. And I don't think we didn't escalate anything, but it is obviously possible, because that means are there that you can escalate to somebody at Forever if there is a disagreement between the team and it's unresolved. But yeah, it's yeah.
Usually when that happens, if you don't mind me interjecting there, and it has, we have had people get heated, especially with time constraints, you would say, mostly in trying to get solutions out of the way and strong opinions about what should work and what shouldn't work, and because of the uncertainty. But the point I tried to make across the board with every single assignment that I've ever taught for years on end is this is not your life's work. Nobody's paying you to do this. It's not your life's work. I mean, you're talking about a 6-week project and you're trying to get the most out of it. And if it doesn't work out perfect, well, that's actually that's a great analogy for life. I mean, I'm not the best at dealing with that either. I'll say, I think I know the right way to do it, and we'll all have an argument about it. And, whatever gets made, they'll realize I was right in the end. And that's a joke in the end. But it's a joke there. But, yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? It's to try and take a step back from it because you feel there's a lot riding on it. And I can actually feel that with the messages you're sending. I can feel that. But it's just, relax and enjoy it. Take everything you can from it. You're going to build a great solution. You're going to build something in 4 weeks of coding, 6 weeks of coding. Well, technically 4 weeks, really, with all the additional things that you have to do there. And it's going to be a wonderful solution that I know professionals who earn I work with people who earn 6-figure salaries that couldn't build this in 4 weeks in the field. I know people like this. And that's not me making fun of them or anything. I'm not downplaying them. I'm just saying that the way they go about their processes, the way they plan, and the way you have to do things properly in the real world, this would take a very long period of time to do properly. There'd be tons of investigate. They would do months of investigation. Months. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that was the advice you gave us. It's only 6 weeks. I was like, don't stress yourself out. It was actually very useful. It was a good turning point for us. I think the stress levels reduced quite a lot after that advice.
Yeah.
And on
Just
that note, Dr. Hunter, you have any final points?
well, not at all. Sorry, not at all.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And again, if you are feeling a little underprepared, please know that we are all here to support you. And you really do have exceptional tutors and an exceptional team here to assist and support you throughout the entire program. We are really happy to have you here with us. We hope you've enjoyed the session, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Further, I'll probably see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.